In every version, there are patches that are going to be stinkers. It's been a minute since I've talked about my disappointment for an entire patch, with that being in 5.4 with Mizuki's release. Now that version 6.6 or Luna 7 is drawing to a close, I have to vent about my feelings towards this patch. There will be story spoilers going forward, you have been warned. My salt also came out a little bit in this video, so I apologize in advance. I started this version by playing the brand new Archon quests, and after that I moved on to complete the other story quests like Nicole's rooms and Lohen's story quests. And after doing those, something became abundantly clear to me. The Archon quest itself was pretty satisfactory in my opinion. We got some good build-up, some nice character interactions, and we finally got the answer as to how Irminsul burned. It wasn't a perfect quest, however, as many of the internet has noted that they disliked the lack of consequences that the quest had. Before I dive into why I think this is the laziest patch yet, I do want to discuss this talking point with the Archon quest. If you want to skip past the sumeru Archon talk, you can jump to this timestamp on your screen. The whole point of the sumeru finale is to avoid a catastrophic world-ending event. Irminsul even had a defensive measure that cut Sumeru's borders off from the rest of Teyvat in case something horrific like this happened. We saw the Sumeru cast work together to figure out what was happening with Irminsul and to come up with a plan to deal with the worst case scenario, which was losing Irminsul entirely. That's why we spent so much time refurbishing Aru so that it could handle the tasks that Irminsul once did just in case the worst came to pass. We saw immediate consequences at the very beginning of this quest with Nahida's condition. After hearing about Kale's dream, she evacuated the entire city and began to help Irminsul process information while simultaneously trying to search for clues. Not long after the traveler's arrival did we see her collapse. I understand why players are frustrated at the lack of consequences in Genshin storytelling. It's a genuine issue and they had the opportunity to change the terrain quite a few times, and that would have been fun to see the map transition that way. However, this Archon quest was the culmination of everyone's hard work to avoid a world-ending event. Irminsul is burned, but due to their planning ahead, they were able to transfer its job onto Aru. We also have to remember that Irminsul burned for 7 days and 7 nights until nothing above the surface remained. This is where changing the map just a little bit would have been really cool. Do I think it's a lazy cop-out that Aru can now just do Irminsul's job thanks to everyone's hard work? Yeah, a bit. I won't lie, but at the very least, we spent a very good chunk of the quests preparing Aru to take on that responsibility. It's not like the solution came out of nowhere in a throwaway line. The characters fought for it. We also learned that Nahida's tie to Irminsul was severed and reconnected to Aru so that she wouldn't suffer further consequences of her life force being sucked away, which was a very prevalent theme throughout the quest. We had to go to Apep to help her, and numerous characters expressed their concern for the Dendro Archon, knowing that she was essentially working with borrowed time. I think what could have solved this issue is to give us one last epilogue scene showing just how unstable the fate of the world is going to become without Irminsul. I did like the ending with Kale as it was a nice wrap up to her arc, but something just was missing. This could have been accomplished in a few different ways. One, we could have had a quick scene with the scholars watching over Aru and noticing that while it's doing Irminsul's job, it's not doing it perfectly or as efficiently as it should. Due to everyone racing against the clock to discover a solution to the impending danger, maybe some information now leaks from Aru and needs patching up. This would at least tell the player that while they avoided a huge disaster today, that there is still much work to be done to ensure Aru can handle the load going forward. Another solution, and my preferred one, would be if we got to see Mona or Barbaloth trying to look through their scryglass. They are able to discern fate through it, and showing a scene where their scryglass is muddy or slightly unstable would have been perfect. Yes, there are still no immediate consequences in both of these scenarios, but it does a better job setting up the future plot points rather than a throwaway line from Nahida. This would be even better if it's Barbaloth, as she's had more of a presence in the story as of late. Teasing some of her human model instead of her Dodoko form would have been a great way to hype her up. Imagine Barbaloth, a powerful mage who has discerned fate numerous times, now realizing that her own scryglass isn't fully reliable anymore due to Teyvat's fate no longer being set in stone. That could really set us up for amazing narrative moments in the future and bring in Barbaloth to the story. We also get some quality of life elements to the Archon quest that I want to address really quick. I like that there are clear save points now, so you don't have to redo a bunch of the quest over if you need to stop playing. I like that there's notes from Paimon, so if you need a quick refresher, you can look it over. But the one element I like the most most is that if one of the characters asks you if you remember a specific event, you can answer yes or no, and your choice matters. If you answer yes, they won't bog you down with an explanation anyway. They'll move on with the story. If you answer no, then they will take the time to catch you back up to speed. This is a great way to respect a player's time. Now, with the discussion surrounding the Archon quest out of the way, I need to vent about why I think this version is one of the laziest ones we've gotten yet. The Archon quest itself was good, and it had some nice cutscenes, but I'm afraid that's where it ends. Nicole has a quest surrounding the Witch's Lodge where one room opens up per week. They took Durin's time-gated quest that took maybe like 5 days and decided to stretch it out to be over a month for Nicole. The quest segments itself were actually pretty short. I looked up to see if there was a playthrough of the entire thing, and the video is 45 minutes. Poor Nicole didn't even get an hour's worth of content over the span of a month in her release patch. Short quests can be good ones, especially if the story is told in a concise manner. It's better to be concise than bloated with dialogue, but it felt more like a daily than it did a Nicole's story. Yes, we learned more about the angels and we got to see some of her memories, but it felt lackluster. Nicole is so interesting as a character and they did not do her justice. Even if the Witch's Lodge world quest wasn't time-gated, I think it would still not be fulfilling for the players. While she did get some nice rendered images, she also did not get a cutscene. The lack of cutscenes in this version is going to become a theme, so be prepared. The next quest I did was the flagship event featuring Prune with the little Hexen circle. The event itself was short, sweet, and it was actually really cute. Its message was simple, but it was an important one. It's okay to be a kid, and don't forget the little joys in life. As always, the event art for these flagship ones are so pretty. I really love the style that they do, but once again, we are not given a cutscene. We get one last image at the very end with the kids playing with their imaginary friends, enjoying the moment while it lasts. This scene would have just hit harder if the developers even gave it like a 10-second cutscene to show how happy they were playing with their imaginary friends. Instead, we are given a rendered image that spoils the fun just a little bit, in my opinion. Thankfully, we did learn about Prune and her story was interesting. We finally get to see why she's hunting Alice specifically as a witch hunter, and she is reunited with her imaginary friend at the end. Alice's methods to help Prune were questionable at best. While she wasn't directly responsible for Prune's imaginary friend beginning to fade, she did instill fear into Prune by putting on the act of a villain who stole her friend. If they want to make Alice into a morally gray character, I'm all here for it. I guess we just need to see how she develops in the future, but I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan with how they introduced Alice in Not Cry. They introduced her only to sideline her into dealing with whatever is going on at the border. It makes me wonder if they introduced her ahead of schedule and realized that if Alice was around, she could easily solve the problems, so they had to conveniently write her out. It reminds me of Jujutsu Kaisen, where Gojo was written to be such a strong character that they had to make a whole plot line to seal him away, or else he could just solve the main conflicts with ease. I'm just crossing my fingers that whatever is going on at the border will become relevant and important in the future, and a good enough reason for Alice's attention. So far, Nicole's world quest and the main flagship event did not have any cutscenes. Unfortunately, that trend doesn't end here, and Lohen's story quest was the final nail in the coffin for me. Don't get me wrong, I like Lohen's character. I skipped Nicole for him. His story quest, however, did him so dirty. The quest starts off with an interesting premise. A knight that Lohen has a connection to is likely going to retire soon, and he wants to give his title off to Lohen, that title being Benevolent Knight. Of course, upon hearing this, the Traveler and Paimon immediately clocked that the Benevolent Knight title likely doesn't fit Lohen. Even Lohen himself isn't too keen on inheriting the title either, and asks us to help ease Adorno's worries by acting as his friends. I actually like that they approached the beginning of the quest this way. We had only briefly met Lohen before, so it would be odd if he was suddenly buddy-buddy with the Traveler. We meet Adorno and help him do some of his duties, which resulted in a pretty fun scene with Lohen's social battery getting drained. He can slay enemies for hours on end, but talking to people and looking after pets is too much. We also get to play as Lohen as they recall some of his past missions, which was okay. I felt it was a little jarring in terms of the pacing, but I like that we got to see the story unfold rather it just being told to us. After these two scenes, we run into D-Luke, and I'm sorry, but his model looks so goofy next to the recent ones. Having him stand next to Varka and Lohen, I could not take him seriously. I'm so sorry, D-Luke fans. We learn about Ursa the Drake and Eric the Traitor. We also learn about how Lohen nearly became an experimental subject if it wasn't for Adorno saving him in time. This is a nice way to tie Lohen into the Knights of Favonius, especially regarding his unique personality. The story really starts to get interesting when we see Sucrose overseeing an experiment with the dream bubble from one of the mages. Lohen offers to help and asks the Traveler to use their memories of the red hair of Solnari so that he could fight him. We learn that Lohen actually fought him during the initial ambush back in Nod Cry, but became so injured he was bedridden after the fact. He realized he was weak and he began to compare himself to some of the strongest characters in the cast. Reality is, Lohen is not a weak character, but he's comparing himself to one of the 5 sinners of Conria. The entire Nod Cry cast had to work together to throw that bitch into the moon shadow or whatever, for goodness sakes. So seeing Lohen beat himself up for his lack of strength here was really interesting, especially since he was comparing himself to such a strong character. But here is where the quest starts to fall apart for me. It's revealed he's working with another character named Theodore, who was also saved by Adorno back in the day to run some experiments. These very experiments are the same monsters that are now running amok in the wild. It's later shown that Adorno's health isn't in the best shape after all, and it's thanks to these experiments that he's been able to do okay so far. Eventually, Adorno's health reaches a point where they had to accelerate their experiments, bringing him to the secret base where Lohen and Theodore came to an impasse. Sure, the serum extracted from these experiments can help Adorno live longer, but who will he become as a result of those serums? While Lohen originally helped Theodore's experiments by cleaning out monsters that got out of control, he decided to end things once and for all. This also meant forfeiting the power he could have gained by using the serum on himself, and we see a rendered image of him breaking it. While he's off being cool and destroying a bunch of monsters, the main conflict, which was the remaining flesh of Ursa, was defeated and handled off screen by the Traveler, Diluc, and Varka. What? There is some pretty art here, sure, but what do you mean the main source of the conflict was now destroyed off screen and not even by Lohen in his own story quest? This is where it completely lost me. We do get one final interesting scene with Lohen facing his corrupted self and rejecting the newfound power by stabbing his hand, but that wasn't a cutscene. That deserved to be a cutscene. Not only is the main source of conflict defeated off-screen, but Lohen doesn't even get a cutscene to emphasize the importance of him rejecting power in that moment. He comes to terms with the fact that he won't be the strongest in Teyvat, but he has plenty of his own strength that he can stand on. The ending of this quest felt rushed, and the good message it was trying to send shattered. There will always be people in life who are better at you in something that you're doing, but recognizing your own progress is so important. This is now the 3rd big quest of this patch with a lacking conclusion. The most frustrating part of this for me is that they were so close. If Lohen had a proper cutscene when facing himself and we actually got the fight against Ursa on screen, I'd be satisfied. This could have been fixed by having Lohen join the other 3 in destroying Ursa once and for all after he dealt with facing his own self. He would be weaker than the other 3, especially since he just stabbed his damn hand, but it would have been thematically nice to see Diluc, Lohen, Varka, and the Traveler working together to put an end to this chapter. You have an ex-Favonius member in Diluc, the leader in Varka, and an up-and-coming knight with Lohen. The parallels between Diluc and Lohen are really good too, and they didn't get much attention in the story. Krapis helped Diluc and Kaya back then before he met his fate. Adorno did the same with Lohen and Theodore. Diluc was the youngest captain, and Lohen would be too if he successfully inherited the title. And I actually like that Lohen didn't get the title in the end, but this quest just felt so rushed and it ruined the great setup it had. The event quest had a great message, and while it does stand on its own, I'm sad we didn't get a little cutscene at the end. Nicole is such an interesting character, but you mean to tell me one of the Hexen Circle mages that's been hyped for so long didn't get her own cutscene? Come on. In a nutshell, the Archon quest was great. I just wished it had one final scene to really bring home how malleable the fate of Teyvat is becoming. While the event quest didn't have a cutscene, it did a pretty good job in delivering its message, so I can look past it. What just grinds my gears is Nicole's world quest and Lohen's story quest. Nicole's unnecessary time gating drove me up a wall. You mean to tell me they spread 45 minutes of content over a month period? Come on. Then you have Lohen's story quest with no cutscene, and the main conflict with Ursa is killed off screen. And yes, another big conflict with Lohen was with himself, and they did address that. The moment when Lohen was facing himself deserved to be a proper cutscene. It's been a hot minute since I've done a ranty video like this one, but I'm just so frustrated with this version, man. Speaking of annoying time getting stuff, we have the Miliastra event that gives you maybe 30 Primo Gems a day if you complete it. You aren't even gonna get 2 pulls for doing the whole thing, but they're still gonna stretch it out for like like 2 weeks. If you enjoyed watching, please leave a like and consider subscribing. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts surrounding this version and its quest, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. I want to hear it, just keep it respectful. If I recall some of the story incorrectly, please feel free to correct me in the comments. If you like Lohen and Nicole, I made separate videos going over their designs that you can watch next if you want to. Those are far less salty than this video. I hope to see you in the next one.